grace to you, O Christ.
May I speak in the name of the Creator, Redeemer and Sustainer. Amen. Sit down. It's kind of nice to be free from working from a full script. I'm a little bit anxious about it. Apologise to you at home if you've got a full script and I'm not preaching exactly what you've got in front of you. So it's nice for me anyway. Very strange all this time. I would have liked to have come back to a really nice, gentle sermon, but actually, straight away, we've got a really hard-hitting text today. And it's something that touches all our lives. The theme really is justice or vengeance. Saying sorry is really difficult. Sometimes forgiving people can be equally or more so difficult. We just come back from on holiday and we went away with Jenny, Steve and Noah, my grandson, who's 4 years old. And whilst we were away, one of the things that really fascinated me was the different parenting model that I observed with my daughter and son-in-law. It was very, very different to the one that I grew up with. And so, if I'm honest, it was different to the one that I operated. Not far off, but still different. Now, Noah is wonderful, charming, lovely, golden, and I'm not biased. But sometimes he does things that he shouldn't do, like any child. And sometimes he says things he shouldn't say, just like any child. And what I noticed about Jenny and Steve was that their parenting model was to explain to Noah why he shouldn't behave or say the things that he did. So for them, it was explanation and love. That's the way they taught him how to have proper boundaries, or in old money, what's right and what's wrong. So they did it through explanation and love. Now, I don't know about you, the generation that I come from, I don't remember any explanations. If I did something wrong, I just got a smack. There weren't any explanations as to why I shouldn't be doing it. Sometimes there might have been in the top of my mother's voice, but basically it was a smack. And I've got to say, I approve of Jenny and Steve's model, because it's rooted in understanding, compassion and love, which is a better Christian model. The other thing I noticed also with Jenny and Steve is that they say sorry. If they've done something, they've said something that's upset Noah, they will say sorry, which is something I don't remember my parents ever doing, because I don't think they thought they should have to say sorry. So the different model is very different. So it's about whether we want justice or do we want vengeance. When we get hurt, our natural instinct is to lash out. And actually what Jesus is telling us is that there is a different way. And also when we are pointing out the faults in others, the speck in other people's eyes, we have to remember the plank in our own. The Old Testament reading is a really difficult reading. It's a very challenging one. We're just getting a snapshot today of a whole story, and many of you will know the story. It's when Moses is sent back to Egypt. He's sent back to Egypt to release the Israelites from slavery. Over the generations, they've gone from welcome guests to slave labour. Now, for Pharaoh, this is nothing that's wrong in his mind. He's got the power, and he can make people work for him for nothing. And if not, he will take their lives. He's a tyrant. But for him, that's a natural way of being. For him, there's no problem or no issue with having slaves. It was a natural way of life for him. Of course, it wasn't for the slaves. It was terrible and unmanageable. So God sends Moses to Pharaoh. Now remember, Moses is Pharaoh's brother. So maybe God is hoping that Pharaoh will listen to Moses and let the Israelites go. He's his brother after all. I mean, to give him credit, he doesn't kill Moses, which is what I would expect. But instead, when Moses comes and asks him to set the Israelites free, Pharaoh will not listen. And no matter how many proofs that Moses gives Pharaoh through the different plagues, Pharaoh refuses to listen to what God is asking him to do. He feels no penance for what he's doing. He doesn't think what he's doing is wrong. And he just gets a hardness of heart, is what we're told. In the text today is the preparation for the last plague. There's no hiding from it. It's horrendous. It's terrible. We can't coat over that in any way. This is the last of the plagues. This is Pharaoh's last opportunity to respond to God's message, and he chooses not to. So Moses is preparing the Israelites for the angel of death to pass over. He tells them that they need to kill a fatted lamb. They use the blood to put around their doorways so that when the angel of death passes over, it doesn't strike any of the firstborn in their homes. That's why it's called Passover. The angel of death passes over the Israelites. And they're to eat the lamb quickly. There's no saving lamb for tomorrow. And in fact, the next day, the bread has to be unleavened because there's no time for it to rise. They need to leave, and they need to leave quickly. And the last plague, the angel of death passes over, and the firstborn animals and people die. You can't get around that. And Pharaoh, so horrified, he lets them go. But there's no change of heart, there's no change of thinking, there's no understanding within that. He just does a knee-jerk reaction and lets them go. But once he lets them go, he changes his mind, whether out of vengeance or greed or lack of understanding. He then has to go and catch them again, and of course he loses his life, and he loses the lives of his men. Recognising when we get something wrong, a time to say sorry is difficult for all of us. H.G. Wells wrote a story called The Time Machine. And since then and before then, I'm sure, and after then, there's been numerous books and stories and films all about time machines. Why are we fascinated with time machines? Well, I suspect deep down inside, most of us would like to go back, turn the clock back, and either see someone we haven't seen for a long while or have passed over, or maybe to go back and put right a wrong that we've done. That word or that action that we've done, either intentionally or unintentionally, that has wounded a relationship. How many of us would like to jump into a time machine and go back and put something right? I wish I had a time machine so that when my father was building difficult situations in our lives, how we deal with conflict. And not many of us are very good at dealing with conflicts. Like I said earlier, when someone hurts us, our instinct almost is to lash out. We want them to feel the pain they're making us feel. And he's talking about someone in a church or a congregational situation. Many people have been in churches and have experienced some form of hurt, either intentionally or unintentionally. So it touches our lives when we listen to this. Now what Jesus says is, I want you to go to the person who's hurt you and I want you to work it out with them. Now what he doesn't say is, I want you to go to that person and tear them off a strip. He's saying, go and talk to that person and try and work it out with them. Try and explain how they've hurt you. He says, if that don't work, take a couple of witnesses. He doesn't mean your mates, so that you can gang up on them. People who agree with you, you know. We've all done that as well, haven't we? No, these are independent witnesses. Yeah, I can see it's touching a few people here. We've all done it. You know, blanks in our own eyes, specks in the others. So he's talking about actually trying to get independent people to be able to arbitrate between you and the person in conflict. Now, we have a history of arbitration. We've got organisations that run like UCAS, where if employers and unions can't agree, they step in and they try and work things out. Or we have, at the moment, we've got arbitration at the moment, the government with us, the way we live, telling us how we should live in order to keep ourselves and others safe. We have court issues where people have gone in to be able to try and work out a dispute with a neighbour or an organisation. And the court is there to arbitrate on your behalf. So it's about resolution. It's not about vengeance. It's about justice. And so what Jesus wants us to do is to work things out. And ultimately, if people will not respond to what is happening, if they know they've hurt people and they're unrepentant, and they will not listen to arbitration, then the terrible, terrible judgment is that they will be cast out. Now, when we look at the world in which we live, I'm sure you share with me some horrors, that we see things happening where great injustice is happening, where people seem to get away with literal murder because they're in positions of power, or they've got so much money that they're able to avoid justice, or there's some way that they're able to escape justice and they're not answering for the things that they've done. There's no way they explain what they've done. They just seem to escape justice. But what I feel comforted by is that if they don't find justice in this world, they will in the next, because you cannot escape God's judgment, as Pharaoh found out. So what Jesus is teaching us is about reconciliation, about actually love, not vengeance. God is merciful and God is just. We haven't got any time machines where we can go back and put something wrong. All we can do is take responsibility for our actions now, each one of us, how we behave to others, and how we respond to how others behave to us. And along with this arbitration, there is forgiveness. It's about how we work towards forgiveness. But that's a sermon for another time.